And I can't find a seconder usually when I prepare this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to defend it against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this, can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
First things first, Alabama State Bar Rules of Professional Conduct, Rule 7.2e requires the following language in all attorney communications. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele, backwoods Southern lawyer. My partner in crime, Paul Ripp, is here. Rains Rushing is joining us from Houston, Texas. Shout out, Rains. Yep. And one more time, wanted to remind everybody that I have moved my office to Daphne, Alabama, the Van Buren Building, 28720 Highway 98, Suite 3, Daphne. So how's everybody doing today?
Good. Number 19.
So I've been in the public sector since 1997, and I have written over 30 ethics complaints, talked about corruption at least 100 times with 3 different district attorneys in my career, and have reported this corruption many, many times to the matter of fact, even the Attorney General falls into that category. So I'm hoping that 18 episodes in, you guys realize that I'm not running for anything. I'm not doing this for any kind of profit. We're taking you on a ride so that you can look over our shoulders. We're going to tell you about things like inexplicable decisions made in courtrooms, what we believe are corrupt or illegal activities. We're going to share this with you. We're going to write ethics commission complaints, judicial inquiry commission complaints, potentially even bar complaints. And we're going to let you in on the responses. We're going to let you know what the Alabama Supreme Court or the appeals court say about these crazy decisions being made in these certain courtrooms. And after a year of this, if you're still voting the same way, well, then shame on you. And I don't mean Democrat or Republican. Don't mean that at all. So that's why I'm doing this. Why are you doing this, Paul?
I'm a consumer group. I started in 2005. My father had the first Alabama Consumer Association in Birmingham. He started that in the late 70s. And I've been personally involved in the RIP report since 2005, and mostly focusing on corruption but consumer issues. Again, I'm not being paid. It's a nonprofit. I'm trying to educate the general public on what's going on, literally backstory, what the backstory is of what you may see. We have very, very limited news. If it weren't for Lagniappe, we wouldn't have a bloody thing that we could read. So with the RIP report, in 2005, we started out just handing out stuff, and then we went to social media in about 2016. So you can go back on the RIP report and look at issues from 2016 up. We also have Baldwin County Legal. We have a ripreport.com, and of course we have the Backstory podcast.
And Rains, you're doing this because you're the only journalist I know with an IQ over 130, and you're my buddy, right? And you used and you've been watching, and you've had an eye on this kind of shit as long as I have. We've talked about it for 30 years.
I've always been a proponent of shining a light on the darker corners of government, be it federal, state, or municipal. But a lot of people don't know this about me. I'll give you a little factoid. I was actually born in Alabama, so I'm a native son of that
Was in
great
a
state.
Boxcar? Is this a country song I hear coming?
No, my parents just couldn't resist it. And when my father rotated back to Vietnam, he was up there in Montgomery, and 9 months later to the day, I popped out and hooray, victory, kind of.
Well, so
I was born like 4 days after the embassy fell. So
wow.
Yeah, Paul was there.
Commemorate it.
Yep.
So last time we were here, was kicking off our first topic, Paul chronicled a portion of a letter that we got detailing corruption at Coastal Alabama Community College in the 2-year college system. That is on our Facebook page. I encourage you to go read it. But the excerpt that I'm going to be talking about is page 2, paragraph 2, and it claims that the chancellor is being investigated by the Southern Association of Schools, Colleges and Schools. That's the SACS accreditation governance board. They're looking into his interference with the governance at Coastal. And the allegations are that he is the de facto president. He's still making day-to-day decisions about policy, staff, finances. And if you'll recall, we're still trying to find out where the hell all this money went that was supposed to be coming to South Alabama so that we would have a police academy. The Southwest Alabama Police Academy was shut down because of corruption, allegedly. I've looked through, I've read all the transcripts of the trial. There was a violation of the public bid law. I've never heard of closing down an entire instructional facility over something like that. And then, of course, it looks like the APOS board has taken over all 3 of the former independent colleges. There was one in Tuscaloosa that they took down, then the Jacksonville they took down, and then SWAPA down here. So now all that money's going to the APOC board apparently, and they are running the institutions. They've taken them over, which was never their mandate. They were supposed to. It is the Alabama Police Officer. What is it? Peace Officer Standards Commission. Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to shoot a gun, and you got to know these certain regulations. And how do we teach you that? That's what they're supposed to be doing, not running a bunch of schools. So we'll circle back to that. Please go check this out. This is happening right here, is apparently all across the state. And if what seems to be a well-placed source, probably somebody with a PhD, definitely somebody with access to a whole lot of budget information. Wouldn't you say, Raines? You've seen this letter.
No, I wouldn't say, after reading that letter, I wouldn't say that the person that wrote it has a PhD in anything. I think the person that wrote that letter needs to go back and retake the English Grammar 101.
Well, that's another hint to who it might be. It ain't the dean of literature, right?
No, it's definitely not that. It is intriguing, though, I guess, because, again, I come from a bit of a spoiled background. I attended the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College over. That's
a much more refined place than Faulkner.
Well, I'm here to tell you, their board of regents, and that college is run extremely well, and it's a landmark program for many community colleges throughout the nation. I'm a graduate. I have an associate's degree from Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, and I can't say anything bad about my experience or the stewardship of it, which is something I've paid attention to over the years as an alum. And reading that letter and going and looking at the background on that particular case, I'm a little bit just shocked, and it's hard to shock me, believe me. I subscribed to Hustler magazine for 10 years, so it's hard to shock me. And I'm here to tell you, reading that letter, it was a bit shocking. Where is the stewardship? Where is the Board of Higher Education in the state of Alabama? Why are there private entities having to take this over? Why isn't the Attorney General involved? This is extreme manipulation and misappropriation of funds. These allegations are not true.
Well, we're going to keep pulling at that thread, that's for sure. And like I said, I went down there. I met with the new president. I told him what all we heard was going on, that we expected him to right the ship. And, and then 3 months later, here comes another anonymous letter alleging more salacious things than we'd heard the first time. So, all right, Paul, I want to switch gears. We're going to do a mini RIP report, catalyst candidates, the like.
Well, on the RIP report, those of you that are not familiar with it, it's on Facebook, usually Wonderful Wednesday and Freaky Friday. Try to get out 2 a week. It's been a little difficult with these VA issues I've had and going back and forth to Birmingham, but thank God that's over with. The last wonderful Wednesday that was January 22nd, and it was called Congressional Catalyst. The Alabama 1st Congressional District has 5 Republican candidates that are vying to fill Bradley Burns' seat, and that's Chris Pringle, Wes Lambert, Bill Hightower, John Castanori, I hope I got that right, John, and Jerry Carl. And the point that we find interesting here is a lot of people are very, very familiar with Catalyst, and they should be very concerned.
Rips made it a curse word in Baldwin County.
Well, it is a curse word. So Catalyst is backing someone for Congress, which is scary because if you go in for Catalyst and you owe Catalyst, let me tell you. On the RIP report now, a lot of times what we do is link articles that have been written in the past. So you can go back and look at what was written back then, compare it till today, and it'll tell you quite a bit. The Catalyst candidate that is in Baldwin County would be Mr. Bill Hightower, and he signed up with Catalyst, and Catalyst is pushing him, and Mr. Hightower has pretty good connections with the past Senator Boom-Boom Pittman, if any of you remember him, and the BP scandal. And also he's advertising on Judge Snedeker, the developer's land. So, you know.
Hey, let's be specific about that.
All right.
The Hightower stuff is at the corner of 181 and Fairhope Avenue, which is the Clump Pud.
Correct.
Clump Pud. It's on that property.
Correct. That's the one that the city council approved that the judge had. That's in the same city as the judge is appointed. So see a lot of conflicts of interest there. But anyway, if you see that they're a Catalyst candidate, I assure you, you better look very close, because Catalyst candidates that we've seen have not been putting your interest at heart. You want to go to
surplus property?
Yeah, surplus properties. I know you guys think I pick on Jack Burrell sometime, but I mean, it's so easy to do, I tell you.
He keeps reloading the magazine for you.
Correct. You know, last week we spoke about the clock and paying a little bit more than $500,000 for the clock in Fairhope. And
no, Raines, chime in on this, dude. They paid $1,500 for the sidewalk. No, I'm sorry. They paid $530,000 for 1,500 square feet at the intersection of Fairhope Avenue and Section Street, which is where the little backlit clock is that's in all the photographs you see of Fairhope. And
yeah, and the clock was put
unbelievable.
There, yeah, the clock was put there in 1989. It's not like it's been there 100 years. But the backstory to that is on the clock is that piece of property, that little patio there, which I think is a valuable asset to citizens of Fairhope, everybody thought that the city already owned it. And 2 times in past administrations that came up to purchase. I think it was about $250,000 at the time, and city council didn't purchase it. So then this city council exacerbated it by, threatening and telling the developer what he could do and what he couldn't do. So the end result is they end up buying this for $525,000, and Mr. Burrell and them are claiming that they're the great negotiators. Now, what comes next is the recreation land that they bought for $2.65 million. That was Boone, Burrell, and Brown that were responsible for the purchase of that. And what's disturbing about that is in October, there was a meeting concerning this property and another piece of property in Fairhope that they were looking at rec land. And so people got up and spoke to the issue of both. In that meeting, the council said, well, what we're going to do is get an appraisal on this piece of property. And everybody said, well, wait a minute, you're going to get an appraisal? It's an appraisal. We're not going to purchase it. It's just going to be an appraisal. So a couple months goes by, the appraisal comes back, the 3 city councilmen push it through. We're talking about from October. This is only January. So they push it through. Then after they push it through, they close on the property before the end of the year. Now, within 2 weeks of closing on $2.65 million worth of property, Mr. Burrell, the great negotiator, item number 6 on the January 13th meeting, the ordinance. The ordinance reads as such: an ordinance to declare that certain real property, 105 farmable acres of the City of Fairhope, is temporarily designated surplus and not needed for public or municipal purposes, in response to an offer to lease property yearly from January 1 to December 31 for 1 year with 4-year options. So what they did was they bought the property, they closed on it within 2 weeks, and within 2 weeks after closing on $2.65 million worth of property, they lease it to a farmer to farm for $9,000 a year. You can't live in an apartment for $9,000 a year, but you can get 105 designated surplus property that's not needed for public or municipal purposes. Think of that. They're saying it's for rec land, and 2 weeks later they're saying it's surplus and it's not needed. Now, I know that cities will do things like this, but it's generally property that's been vacant for quite some time. It's not property that they acquire and then they lease out immediately again. And this purchase was done as a basis. They had an appraisal that's very, very questionable. Bogus is what one appraiser told me, and said it wouldn't hold up in court, where they compared the land values to sales in the area and property that hadn't even sold. So, the whole thing stinks. Now we're sitting on $2.65 million worth of farmland that we are leasing for $9,000 a year. Tell me that's negotiating.
All right, let's get into the guts of the podcast. So the last time we were here, and we rely a good bit, or Paul does, on the Lagniappe articles for our podcast. Seeing it's the only local news that we have to rely on, except for what we know personally and dig up on our own, or someone sends us. So the Lagniappe went to press last week, and of course Paul was sitting here blowing sunshine bubbles, rainbow bubbles, saying that, hey, the Lagniappe won the motion to quash hearing, and I was going, what in the hell are you talking about? They didn't win anything. Right. So apparently they read their motion to quash and thought they had won and went to press. And so what you were relying on and what I was looking at were two different things.
Correct.
Now they have come out with I don't even know how much I'm going to be able to comment on this. A couple of articles that are pretty dang rough on the judge, I'll have to say. And I guess I'm going to just let you take it over, Paul, and tell folks what the Lagniappe's position on this, and I'll talk about it in a minute.
Well, basically, this is the same case, ladies and gentlemen, that we're talking about, where Paula Donardi got knocked off a bar stool by the Fairhope bar owner, Ronan McSharry. And the attorney, James Pittman, has tried to just suck us all into this thing, when we have absolutely nothing to do with it. The mayor, myself, Harry, and it's just gone from one thing to the other. So now we're in front of the judge, and the judge has concluded that published information would be considered privilege, but he ordered the paper to turn over all materials and/or documents and/or requested communications that were not published. And I mean, I'm looking at, God knows what's going to happen on this now, because I don't suspect Lagniappe is just going to roll over on this. But James Pittman, the attorney, and that's former Senator Boom-Boom Pittman's brother, that shield laws protect the disclosure of sources, but not the information they provide. Pittman has claimed he knows who Lagniappe's sources are, but is seeking communications with people he believes have got it in for Mr. McSharry. This is about as weak as you can get.
So, Raines, last time we were here, I read some some of the rules of evidence, and one of the first foundational rules of evidence is that evidence must be relevant. Okay, and I read the definition and went through all that. So, and just follow me here, okay? Even if there is a conspiracy to maliciously prosecute this guy who we've all watched the video over and over again of him knocking this woman off the bar stool, how in the world is that in any way relevant to her claim against him for busting her head open when she hit the floor?
Right.
How can that be relevant at all in this case, period? Now, first of all, the privilege that I was looking to quash is not my privilege. I don't have any privileges. Paul Ripp as my client has a privilege, and he did not waive it. Ms. Donardi as my client at one time did not waive it. The shield law is the Lagniappe's, right? It's their shield. So subpoenaing me, saying I want all your communications with the Lagniappe, is just another way of going around the shield law. I mean, we're talking basic First Amendment protection stuff. Like first day of law school.
No, you're not. That's the problem with Alabama shield law. It protects the Alabama shield for sources law protects the disclosure of sources where no one can be compelled to reveal who their sources are. It in no way protects the information garnered from said source. And that's the workaround for the Alabama shield law. They can subpoena the information, and they can be granted that subpoena, and any motion to quash can be summarily denied, because if they're just asking for the information, not to reveal the source of the information, that can still be put into the record.
Dude, when they contact me and say, we want your communication with the Lagniappe, it's Lagniappe is the only one who can say whether they used any. Maybe I am a source, maybe I'm not, but it's their privilege to say if I am or not. Do you understand that hair has to be split by the Lagniappe? It can't be split by the judge. It can't be split by me. It can't be split by Pittman. It's their privilege.
You need to go back and look at some case law. Up in Colbert County in 2004, State v. Powers. That court case will pretty much explain what I'm talking about. But
okay, but you're missing. You're talking around me, dude. You're not talking on the same subject I am. That's what I'm saying. Well, so let me give you another example. So remember Mike Price? Does anybody remember the coach or whatever? So the shield law was used to shield Mike Price.
It shielded him as a source, but it doesn't shield the information they provide. That's the workaround. If you submit the information that was provided by a source in a relevant court of law, that can be subpoenaed. But
the information, I agree with you, but but getting it from me, saying, "Did you ever communicate with Lagniappe? Well, let us see what it is, and I'll determine as the judge whether it's shielded or not." He doesn't get to make that decision. The legislature put a check on the courts when it comes to the First Amendment, and you have to follow it. And the reason there's no damn law on it is that we've treated it like it's scripture. Nobody's ever pulled at the threads of this shield law before. And if you do have some case law on it, I'm sure that it says what you say it says, but I'm saying that is not my argument.
Well, also, this is the article, again, I want to remind everybody, I'm picking parts out of these articles. I can't read the whole thing, so I suggest you get the Lagniappe to fill in the gaps on the articles that may interest you. This is an absolute privilege. Judge's ruling would compel Lagniappe to provide communications with sources. Now, this is by Jason Johnson. And last year, Donardi's attorney, David McDonald, filed a petition with the state's high court requesting a review of some of Stankowski's previous decisions in the case that seemed to be out of the ordinary. The court agreed to look at it, and I don't think there's been any decision on that yet. Now, Ms. Donardi's criminal case is coming up on Monday, and I am going to give the prediction that something will happen on Monday that will prevent it from going any further.
So, Paul,
or to another date or something of that nature.
So all appeals de novo from municipal courts are all heard by Judge Norton. I've never had a municipal appeal heard by anybody else. Now, it is set for Monday, but they filed a motion to have everything moved to Judge Stankowski's court.
Which, I look at all of the contributing factors in the case with Stankowski and the complaints and Pittman and everything, and I don't see that how there could not be some conflicts of interest with him hearing the criminal portion. Now, there's another article, Damn the Torpedoes, written by the editor Rob Holbert, Judicial Power Run Amok in Baldwin. Now, this is the same issue. And remember, they're dragging, when I say they're, Mr. Pittman is the one dragging Lagniappe and us into it. So he's getting all this extra press from us, which I think he probably considers negative, but this is something that he has inspired, okay? And Mr. Holbert's article takes on a little bit more explanation on what is going on. And he says, so now in the courtroom, at least, it's okay to subpoena media outlets to see who we've been talking to if the information hasn't been used yet in a story. Let that sink in. It's okay to subpoena information we haven't used or published yet. Okay, well, that'll make you think. And there's one other thing. Stankowski's brother, also an attorney, sent a letter 3 years ago threatening to sue Lagniappe for recovering then County Commissioner Chris Elliott's DUI arrest. Any of us?
Do we have sad face picture of Commissioner Taxman Elliott?
That's just
no.
Those of you that remember Mr.
We need to keep that thing handy to throw up.
Mr. Elliott was going to, fall on the sword and take all his responsibilities, and he didn't do anything.
He didn't even get his license revoked. Does anybody remember that little two-step?
Right. Let us get a DUI and see how we can. Well, Lagniappe reported Elliott's efforts to use his political position as a means of obtaining a 45-day license suspension instead of the standard 90 days.
So, Raines, let me tell you this. If you work for Baldwin County and you have a vehicle assigned to you and you get a DUI, you know what happens to you under the terms of your employment when you sign up in the little handbook? You are fired upon conviction if you're a county employee.
Right. Isn't that how that thing happened with Nodine started out that way? They found a joint in the car. That idiot took his truck to the county shop to have it worked on, and they found a bunch of marijuana and pills and shit in the console of the truck or in the ashtray or something. Always take that stuff out before you go in there and have it clean.
Please
let me circle this back.
All right.
Let me circle this back. First and foremost, Backstory Podcast, we're here to tell you about issues that are going on. I know sometimes we sometimes tend to get into Barber College Law Review where we're dissecting case law and things like that and rules of evidence, but let's bottom line it. You have a clear-cut case of assault against an individual. This person, there is video of a person committing assault. And for some reason, your courts are focusing on First Amendment rights as guaranteed by the Constitution and trying to drag the Alabama Shield Law into who says what and where information comes from. It is absolute and total abuse of the system in place to protect freedoms. This is a clear-cut assault case, and it's being manipulated by people.
Right.
So,
in power in your back. That sort of stuff is why we're here. Not necessary to argue law, not necessary to argue case reviews and rules of evidence and everything else. What we're here to do is shine a light on what's happening in your backyard.
Two people who are sitting here right now. This isn't like this
What
has
if it
happened to somebody we know.
Two people that are on this podcast to testify in a clear-cut assault case. What if that was your mother he knocked off that bar stool? You think you'd put up with all this wrangling in the courts?
I'd be in jail.
Changes of venue and everything else? Hell no. This is to shine a light on what's happening right now.
And this also
And
goes.
You need to.
So let's let Paul finish this up for us.
All right. So, this goes back to what I've been seeing all along as a conflict of interest between attorneys and judges and people handling these cases, and these cases going to judges that maybe should recuse themselves. No one hardly recuses themselves here unless they're pressed to recuse themselves. We had the conflict of interest written about Judge Norton, where in September Norton recused to separate from a year-old fraud case in which his former law partner, Brian Britt, was representing the defendants. Norton's statements of economic interest on file with Alabama Ethics Commission reported income from referral fees ranging from $10,000, $50,000, $50,000, $150. This goes all the way through $118. Britt later explained that the payments were matters that were referred to another firm during the time of their relationship. So he's entitled to his share of those fees. Now here's the kicker. Neither Norton nor Britt have detailed which case or cases were referred to or which firm handled that. The documents in reference to the straw man in this case and everything else have been by Lagniappe put on a compiled online site, which is lagniappemobile.com/series/BCSS. Now, we encourage people to write us a letter. That's how we got the letter on the college. And here's a letter that I just got making these allegations.
Hey, I want to ask a hypothetical question related to this McSharry case.
All right.
Who does Donald Trump hate more than Rosie O'Donnell?
Adam
It's a riddle.
I don't know.
Raines, do you know?
Man, I ain't even speculating on that.
The press. He hates the damn press. So if you want to get somebody's attention, how would you do it?
Well, to that point, and I'm not saying we're full-blown press, but to that point.
Oh, I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about getting Trump's attention.
Well, I know, but the one thing that I do want to point out.
Pick on the press.
It seems like the podcast is getting quite a bit of attention in certain areas because, it's a verbal thing. It's not a reading thing, and we're hitting another group of folks. But what I wanted to go back to is I did get this letter dated January 20th, 2020, to whom it may concern, and these are allegations set forth. This is in reference to the Wharf and lawsuits in the Wharf, and it's like a revolving door down there, tenants that come in and out and everything else. So there's definitely a problem going on. But it reads, "We the people need help. In the Baldwin County Circuit Division, there is widespread corruption that is reflecting the abuse." This was sent to Fox News, by the way. "That is reflecting the abuse of judges. I myself am a victim and fighting the system to the Supreme Court of Alabama. But I can assure you they are going too far, and there is no one in the state doing anything to stop corruption. We will attest to that. The latest is the violation of freedom of the press. I assure you that they will proceed to even execute jail time if this news media does not give them what they want. Look at the story. This is only one small piece of the judicial corruption in the county court system." And she's referring to the judge's ruling would compel Lagniappe to provide unpublished communications. Baldwin County Circuit Court Judge Clark Stankowski ordered Lagniappe to turn over unpublished communications with protected sources Tuesday, ruling that all materials and or documents and or requested communications that were not published, broadcast, or televised are not subject to protection by the Alabama Shield Law. 3 judges who have openly demonstrated judicial abuse. In our case, allegedly, this is again Judge Joe Norton, Judge Clark Stankowski, and Judge Jody Bishop. I can show you direct violations of judicial abuse of power, money, kickbacks on paper, pictures of judges with plaintiffs at gatherings, real estate transactions, while proceeding over court cases and never recusing themselves. Attorneys on recording telling me that I am not from there. That's a good old boy system. It's unreal. I am not from there and would never imagine in a million years what my family has endured just by opening a business with a realtor who lied to us and so many other people. I put my faith in the court system to rectify the situation, and what happened next is beyond any nightmare imaginable. I have pages of information, but the news outlet is now reporting it, and no surprise that they will want it hushed. Thank you for your time. Please look into this. People need to know, and we need the people to be aware. Shirley Leffner, and like I said, this is in reference to the Lagniappe article as well as her experiences, and that's her allegations. And her allegations fit right in with what we've been talking about and the conflict of interest that seems to crop up, be it attorneys or judges.
All right, so you were talking about people who are responsible for prosecuting these types of issues that we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about our Attorney General and his responsibility to prosecute corruption. You know, I don't really have a position on the marijuana issue until it's a federal law. It doesn't really matter to me personally. He's probably wrong on the pot issue, though, right? I mean, we kind of kicked the man while he was down on that. So now he's been named as one of AL.com's most corrupt elected officials of the decade of the 2010s. So remember, we had Governor Bentley, who was making time with one of his staff members, right? And Senator Sessions was tapped to become the Attorney General of the United States, creating a vacancy. So Bentley appoints Strange to that Senate seat, assuring that he won't prosecute him. And then he's got to go find somebody willing to serve as Attorney General who will agree not to prosecute Governor Bentley, right?
Right.
So that's who he found. And then, you know, so he's appointed, and then that's what we were confused about, Paul. He ran this last time to defend the seat he was appointed to, and that's when his wife killed herself, and allegedly she was on, you know, it was over an opioid addiction.
Right, but
that's what I've read.
Yeah, but he also stepped out as well as his pick for the white collar crime and saying that he was going to investigate corruption. And
well, what's the first thing he did? He fired Matt Hart's ass,
right.
And Matt Hart was the only one with the guts to go after the Speaker of the House.
Right.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Is that guy in jail yet?
Nope. Still out.
I think so.
Still out.
I didn't
Still
think
out.
so.
Well, that kind of what you're talking about leads into the cover article 2020 legislative preview. Baldwin lawmakers seek to influence gambling, prison proposals, and more. And this is written by Gabe Time, Lagniappe, and they cover the prisons, mental health care, gambling, lottery, medical marijuana, and the grocery tax.
What's funny is almost everything in this article we've already talked about except for the grocery tax, right? I mean, we got people pretty much up to speed on the proposals.
Correct. And but with the medical marijuana, really needs to be looked at now.
Well, so did that commission come back with a recommendation? I know Marshall came out and said, I don't care what they recommend, you shouldn't do it. I have concerns.
That's the Cannabis Study Commission.
Yeah.
Which was established and tasked with making recommendations. I mean, this is what they're supposed to do. And let me make a point to people. You know, you think our legislators and everything, when they come up, let's say they're talking about medical marijuana, And they say, well, we need to do a little bit more research, or we need to look at this, or we need to ask this question. This has already been asked. There's 36 states that have this type of legislation. So when you go to look at something like this, it's not like you're trying to reinvent the wheel. You got tons of information out there. And now we have an Alabama Cannabis Industry Association and a lobbyist, Che Garrigan, who is representing the medical marijuana and I believe also the hemp industry, because hemp is coming back on. And so hopefully they'll start looking at that. But the medical marijuana is going to come about. I mean, it's going to happen. And the thing that bugs me is the deal with the veterans, because I've spent a lot of time in veterans hospitals. I've heard the opinions of doctors there categorically say that they knew that it helped. In fact, in this one article, the article here on the legislative preview, Senator Elliott said that he voted for the bill the first time, but was back on the fence. Boy, I tell you what, you could have that tattoo, back on the fence, because that's where he is most time, with the commission's report. Now, here's what I thought was very telling. This is Mr. Elliott speaking. My wife just got through with some pretty nasty cancer therapy herself, and I can see firsthand how folks can benefit from something like that. Well, to me, he's admitting that his wife used medical marijuana, and God bless her, she should have. My wife did the same thing, and she needed it, and it helped. But how in the world can you say something like that and then be in opposition to it? It makes no sense. And to compare it with opioid use is like archaic. I mean, that's like so far back in the conversation that we can't even speak about it. But that's on the medical marijuana. Another thing that's up is the grocery tax, and they've been talking about this quite some time. It's $400 to $500 million a year that comes in grocery tax, and the Alabama Arise,
absolute most regressive tax you can possibly have on poor people.
Well, Alabama Arise, a nonprofit, nonpartisan coalition of congregations, organizations, and individuals promoting public policies to improve the lives of Alabamians with low incomes, is also promoting the grocery tax abolition. The proposal, however, to end the full federal income tax, FIT, deduction for the top 1% of earners, which would eliminate the grocery tax and still leave funding to address the other critical issues. By untaxing the groceries and ending the FIT donations, lawmakers can make Alabama tax system more equitable for everyone. Alabama Arise Executive Director Robin Hayden said in a news release last year they can strengthen state support for K-2, higher education, and they can make it easier for struggling families to put food on the table. This is an opportunity to make the life better for everyone in the state, and is nowhere near as controversial as medical marijuana, the gambling, or the prisons.
We have a video, is that thing queued up and ready to go, about I guess she's a murder victim here in Baldwin County. So let's play that, and when we come back, we'll talk about it just a little bit. Go for it.
On December 15th at this home, the shooting on December 15th at this home changed the lives of everyone in Dominique Marshall's family.
My mind was like numb, and all I can do is just pray, and really just pray for my family, because they was hurt also.
She grew up in Bay Minette, and her father says she wanted to be a dental hygienist. She was the calming presence for the whole family.
Dominique, she really changed my life a whole lot, and she taught me how to really be humble. She was very humble and very obedient.
With so many people who were at that house party, Dominique Marshall's father says there are still more people that need to talk to law enforcement about what happened.
You know, a lot of people out that was at the party, they even know somebody there, or they know someone, or they all know each other.
Marshall says he met with deputies this month, and while he says he can't talk about details, he says he's not frustrated with no arrests so far.
It's just a slow process, and there's a reason why it's a slow process, but they are doing their job, and best believe justice will be served.
Justice for Dominique and the 2-year-old son she leaves behind. In Bay Minette, Chad Petrie, WKRG News 5.
All right, so the victim of this house party shooting was a young lady named Dominique Marshall. This was over a month ago. It's my understanding that the sheriff's major crimes unit, the MCU, has been assigned, and of course there no arrest. You heard from the father there. So let's back up a second and talk about some of the other issues that are still on the table in the legislature. Now, we've covered these before, but I think we just want to give you a refresher on them. So right now, we are under federal court order to do something about our prison system, Paul.
Right.
So what's the legislative fix for this?
Well, prisons and mental health care, $900 million project is being proposed to build and manage a for-profit. For-profit means you need prisoners, people. For-profit in the state. The Alabama Department of Corrections currently manages several aging and decrepit prisons built with a capacity of a little bit more than 12,000.
Agreed.
While the state is also under the threat of a lawsuit, which is way past due, they could be hit with this anytime, by the U.S. Department of Justice for allegedly violating the Constitution rights of more than 27,000 inmates.
Why? Because they got beat up and raped and
the conditions
kept in inhumane conditions.
The conditions are just really super, super poor. And, the state's behind in just about everything else, and the prisons were the last thing. And to keep throwing people in prison for some things that should be considered a mistake rather than a misdemeanor. State Rep Matt Simpson, a former prosecutor in Baldwin County District Attorney Office, has proposed a bill establishing a mental health court. Now, these courts are in different parts of the state, and these are under review by them. Studies have shown that if you spend $1 on mental health, when you catch offenders on low-level offenses, you can save $6.75 on the back end. Think about that, folks. Simpson's plan is, here's what I thought was real interesting, too. We're just talking about medical marijuana and this and the benefits of that, and we're going to get into the lottery in a minute. But Simpson's current plan is to fund the court by placing a 10% sales tax on vaping. The CBD and hemp products, so that the legislator would have to pass a constitutional amendment to do that. Isn't it funny how immediately we find a way to, come up with a tax, and this is a sin tax. This is what you, for lack of a better term, you could call a sin tax.
Every time you go buy a playing card, something like that, there's a tax on them.
Well,
little did you know.
Jumping back just for a second, the Educational Trust Fund, Alabama Educational Trust Fund. Now, Mr. Elliott, one of the things that he's proposing is to maybe using that educational trust fund to fund or to supplement the grocery tax.
Well, they're going to have to get money from somewhere. They just can't repeal the damn grocery tax.
I know, but leave education alone. Leave it alone.
Paul,
they rob everything.
They got an extra $500 million in the education fund. They're going to get that damn money.
Well, then they need to use
spend it just as fast as they can.
Then
on anything but education.
True. And now they're being dangled in front of them. Now it's $1 billion, and they're in just full mode as to how they can get their hands on that. So you want to get into that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the gambling lottery.
Winning for Alabama, and if you live in Alabama, you got a damn something in the mail a few days ago. Did you get one, Paul?
Oh, yeah.
A flyer telling you about how great an idea it was.
The people that I've been talking to in Montgomery are saying that the legislators are just looking at this with their mouths open and drooling. And the thing that upsets me the most about it's $1 billion. They're looking at $1 billion. What aggravates me is that I can't remember how many years it's been since we've been talking about a lottery. Alabama has nothing. They go right back to saying, oh, well, we're going to study this, or we're going to do this. We can't have a lottery. The Indians are stepping up and offering them $1 billion. This is the backdoor, easy way.
Bull crap, because we don't need the Indians to do any of this stuff.
Then
We could have a
something.
lottery. We could have a gaming commission. We could have table gambling, all that. This is what I don't understand.
Look.
Why is it an emergency right now?
Correct. And again, like I told you a minute ago about these lobbyists, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Mississippi all have lotteries. So if we want a lottery, go to a computer, punch up what the hell they did in legislature in one of those states, and pick one and have a lottery. That's all you have to do. But if you designate money out of that lottery for education, keep your damn hands off of it.
All right. Range, you still with us?
Yeah, let me go store the community up the street. I live off US 9 here in Kingwood, Texas, and just up the street from me is a little town called Patton Village. And Patton Village is a exit community. They're just basically an exit. What's on either side of the highway? 85%.
Dude, you're breaking up too much. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't know why you're breaking up.
I don't know what's going on with that thing. So, actually, one of the things I want to talk to you about, Rains, was the red flag gun law in Virginia. Any ideas about? I think we lost him. Yeah. Okay. So in Virginia, they have passed a law where I guess if you're a dangerous person or someone avers it, they can make you surrender your firearms, kind of like a hearing that you would have if you were being involuntarily committed. And I guess that's what all those people loaded up and headed out that way for on Monday. I don't think they had the kind of trouble they thought they were going to have, but that might have been because of the state of emergency and the number of people who were there. Another thing I wanted to tell you about is in a lot of states, if you are HIV positive, you have to tell the person that you're about to couple with that you have said disease, because it's essentially, they could die. So now there's a movement afoot because we have drugs and you can just live your life on a ventilator or whatever. Can you imagine you have a great quality of life living on antivirals and all that kind of stuff? I mean, my understanding, that's pretty rough medicine to take.
Right.
It's kind of like being on chemo. So now, anyway, there's a movement afoot to do away with that disclosure law. If anybody's got that bad of an idea, I would imagine we should keep an eye on Chris Elliott. I imagine he'd propose a bill like that. The Attorney General for the United States has launched the Presidential Commission on Law Enforcement. So there's a 12-member committee, and it's all these heavy hitters like the Assistant Director of the FBI, the Director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and then you get on down to the bottom of the list. Guess who's on there?
Who?
The Sheriff of Shelby County, Alabama. I'm just thinking, what is he there for? He can't. Chances are he can't spell.
Let me tell our listeners, I'm sorry, Rains broke up on that. We're still having, every now and then some technical difficulties in trying to get this together, and he contributes a lot, so we'll try to get that to where it doesn't break up.
Once we get in our permanent location, I'm sure it'll be fine. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, wasn't there some legislation in there where the Association of County Commissions and the League of Municipalities were raising hell?
Yes.
So let me tell you how screwed up your state is, people. Because counties don't have home rule.
Oh, that was on police jurisdiction.
It's on,
Correct.
Chris Elliott, one more time, the tax man, has proposed that we do away with the extraterritorial police jurisdictions that municipalities can enjoy control over. Out, you know, and it's really a planning jurisdiction too. They control subdivision regulations in that extraterritorial jurisdiction. But if you want to be short-sighted, like some people around here, you can just look at it as a PJ, and you can say, well, it's a terrible idea to collect taxes from people in the PJ and spend money on services like police and fire, and they don't get a vote. Well, annex into the city. So the League of Municipalities came out against this bill that Commissioner Elliott proposed. So why do you think so there's 67 counties? Any idea how many municipalities we have?
Oh,
over 100, 150 probably. So they all have a coalition where they hire a lobbyist who has an office and a whole staff up there in Montgomery, and it's their job to make sure that these jokers don't steal money or reappropriate money or reapportion money that has been appropriated for the municipalities for their use. You know, that's the favorite thing for the legislature to do, is steal money from the counties.
right.
Oh, we'll just take some of their 7-cent mony and we can put it over here,
Especially if you're in
and
South
deal with this
Alabama.
special project. So anyway, that project in particular, the League of Municipalities came out swinging for the fences against, and that ought to tell you whether it's a good idea or not. And then, of course, our Constitution and the form of government that we have in Alabama, the fact that the county commissions don't have home rule. The Association of County Commissions also have a lobbying arm up in Montgomery. They do. All of these organizations were created for this purpose, and then they kind of snowballed into other things. They have a self-insurance fund for insurance purposes, that kind of thing. And they also get legal advice. So if if you're a mayor or whoever, you can call the League of Municipalities and they'll give you some advice. But because of the form of government that we have, and because anytime the county wants to do something, they have to go to Montgomery and beg off for a general law of local application. So it's a law that everybody in the state votes on, but it only affects this one county. So guess how they do that? If all of the senators and state representatives from Baldwin County agree to it, then everybody goes and pushes the button and agrees to it. So theoretically, one of these legislators can completely stop in its tracks anything that everybody in Baldwin County, including the county commission, thinks we should do. And let me think of a good topic. Maybe regulating Baldwin County sewer service. That might be a good example of just how this system gets used by people who understand it to make sure there is no regulation.
Right. And Baldwin County Sewer Baldwin County is the only county that does not have any sewer regulations. So, the county should step up and say, have a moratorium or something until this gets straight, because they're blaming it on the legislature, and the county commission could step up and say, okay, look, we're going to do this beforehand.
All right, we're up against the clock. Update on the Equal Rights Amendment. Virginia passed it and sent it on to whoever. I guess the Department of Archives and History would give a crap, but I doubt the president of the Senate's going to ratify that thing anytime soon.
Yeah.
So there is a story, and it's on mynbc15.com. I just want to point you guys in the direction of it. Apparently, somebody's dumping raw sewage here in central Baldwin County. We do have a video.
They've done
Let's
that
play
in the
that
past.
thing. I forgot about that. Let's run it.
Alert 7, some people in Baldwin County say there's an unholy stench wafting through their neighborhood. Even worse, they're worried it could affect their drinking water. That stench is coming from biosolids, human waste sludge used as fertilizer, piled up on Fox Branch Road north of I-10. NBC 15's James Gordon spoke to neighbors and to county officials about the potentially dangerous issue.
Neighbors complained to the county commission, and right now the county's solid waste director, the district attorney's office, and ADEM are looking into those complaints. What goes on here behind these gates? People who live here along Fox Branch Road north of I-10 don't like what they see, and they really don't like what they smell.
It'll burn your nose hairs. I've wondered about it, and as I keep seeing the trucks come in and out, I knew that something was going on that shouldn't have been going on the land, because this will affect my water well, and that's where I'm concerned.
The company that owns this property, Green South Solutions, has been hauling sewage sludge from local water treatment plants and dumping it here for 2 years now, and it's legal. Right now, the process is regulated by the EPA.
That whole program is run out of Kansas, so when you're wanting something in Baldwin County, Alabama, it's just harder to get here. So if the state had a program in place, maybe you could keep a better eye on these things to make sure that the envelope isn't being pushed.
In the course of the last 4 months, there have been 2 public hearings with state environmental officials. ADEM says it is listening, but there's been no solution or regulation coming from the state yet.
As soon as the heat, let down, if you will, from ADEM and their investigation was over and their people weren't standing here anymore, the volume of trucks just skyrocketed and increased, and it just got to a level where it's just unbearable to an average person.
What neighbors need now are regulations at the state level.
The regulations are put out. You would have to register these sites. They would have to have operation plans. They would have to have, it's just going to be a little bit more maybe stringent than what it is right now, but they would be held more accountable.
We contacted Green South Solutions, a company out of Florala, Alabama, and we have not heard back. In Baldwin County, James Gordon, NBC 15 News.
And we're back. So it looks like the county commission, the DA's office, and ADEM are all on top of this. So this problem will be debated for 17 months and solved when this company decides it no longer wants to dump poo-poo just on the ground out here. This Green South Solutions.
And this is an issue that comes and goes periodically too.
One other thing I wanted to touch on real quick, AL.com came out with, well, they didn't come out with it. I guess the FBI did, where Alabama lands on the list of, I guess the statistic is violent crimes per 100,000 people. And Alabama's number 7. Not so great, right?
Not so great.
Okay, Paul, it's up to you.
Other articles in the Lagniappe, and those of you that want to see the advertisement, we criticize the Mobile paper. Now you get a section for a shoe station that'll bigger than the paper. So Lagniappe's got a page for a shoe station too, so you can go there. Also, pardon me. We had 3 people, I thought this was weird, 3 people from the Floribama area talking about how they wanted a Lagniappe box out there. So if you want a distribution point for Lagniappe, call them up. Another one of the articles in Lagniappe, this was by John Mullen. It's Bradley Burns' campaign to business, Baldwin Business Organization. This is Gumbo Stomp. In the March 3rd primary, Bradley Byrne will face off against Jeff Sessions, former Auburn football coach Tommy Tuberville, and former Chief Justice Roy Moore. Alabama Secretary of State John Merrill dropped out of the race. Mr. Byrne has said that in his first 5 years in Congress, I really felt like we were doing a lot of good stuff and getting a lot of things done, he said. Even when President Barack Obama was there, someone who I disagree with a lot, I felt like we were getting a lot done. And certainly the first 2 years of the President Trump's term, we got a lot done. And then he goes on to say that what he is talking about, he is citing the tax reforms, relaxing of regulations on business and industry, improvements in national defense, and Trump's appointment to the conservative judges to the federal courts. How much of that Bradley had a part in, I'm not sure. There's another article by Mr. Mulling, Ebbing the Tide. The workshop showcases new techniques to manage stormwater. I thought this was pretty interesting. Dr. Kevin White USA campus, and what they did was they were studying stormwater and taking the stormwater off of buildings and putting it into usable areas such as landscape areas and stuff like that. And he had such a warm reception to the original presentation he gave that he's come up with a workshop, and that workshop is now offered to cities and municipalities to study. All of them should attend and look at it. Another article by John Mullen, documentary film to feature the Gulf Shores Native American Canal. This is really interesting. I've heard about this and read a little bit about it. It's a documentary about Native Americans in Alabama.
I want to chime in on this because I don't think has anything to do with what they think it has to do with. I think they dug these canals so that I think it's a fish trap. It's a sophisticated fish trap that they might have also used to float things along in. But the size of it, it's not like the Erie Canal.
Well, I know,
where you're putting flatboats on it, moving stones or anything.
Well, this is about
I'm familiar with them.
Yeah,
hell, I used to work down there.
This is a Fort Morgan Peninsula,
right.
And the canal was first dug, when you think about it, 1,400 years ago. And the canal was dug from Oyster Bay to form a half-mile-long connection with Little Lagoon and Gulf Shores. And it's about 30 feet wide and 6 feet to 8 feet deep. And what they think it was used is exactly what you're saying, for gathering food, or as some sort of trap. Maybe,
I think it's a fish trap.
Yeah, maybe a tidal trap. But one of the things that they found from the debris of research and archaeologists is how many Indians from different parts of the United States traversed through here. Very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to the movie coming out, so keep that in mind. The next thing is the oversight overseas. Whistleblower alleges fraudulent distribution of foreign aid. DOJ disagrees, by Jason Johnson. This is real interesting. After living in Central America as much as I did, I can really relate to this. This is a lawsuit by Murray Farmer and presiding U.S. District Judge Chrissy DuBois's courtroom. And Farmer is a former employer of DRC Inc., a local company that performed work on behalf of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, in Honduras after Hurricane Mitch struck there in 1998. That's how long this has been going on. And very, very interesting article. His allegations are pretty strong, but basically what he is saying is that USAID took money. Listen to how this is framed. USAID took money it owed to me, the contractor, and gave it to Honduras to fight my claims for payment. It's just the ultimate betrayal. They invited me to go overseas, let me do my job, didn't pay me, then gave my money that I earned, that they agreed they owed me, to a foreign country to fight my claim and avoid paying me. It's cannibalism. USAID are cannibals. And, you know, I can sympathize with it because I saw some of that firsthand, and it just makes you wonder if it doesn't make you wonder. You know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, you know. Last but not least is another article on the Beltway beat. This is by Jeff Poor. Bradley Burns' best shot is Robert Bentley. And this is another take on the competition coming up for that seat, for the Senate seat. And people should get a little bit more involved and see what's going on. The name of the game in the primary, of course, is to survive, to compete in the runoff. In the runoff, it will be a completely different situation. So we're going to have to find out who makes the runoff and who doesn't make the runoff.
All right, we got one more thing we got to talk about before we get out of here because it is historical, and while we don't pay a whole lot of attention to national politics, I think we needed to give it some lip service. So Donald J. Trump is being impeached, or not being impeached yet. They're doing procedural.
He has been impeached.
Well, he's been impeached by the House, but his impeachment trial happens in the Senate.
Right. Chief
Justice Roberts is sitting up there in his robe telling them, guys, remember where you are, remember your decorum. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this. In our society, typically, I'm not saying a man can't be a sex symbol, but typically women are sex symbols and men are success symbols. Do you agree with that? Like you see Jeff Bezos with some supermodel.
Right.
You go, what in the, if you didn't know who the guy was, you'd think, what, this woman's obviously has macular degeneration, right? Okay. So where does Trump fall into this spectrum? Well, he's the ultimate success symbol, right?
No,
do you agree?
No, you're on your own on this one.
Yeah, he's the ultimate success symbol. No, and I'm not saying women can't be success symbols or men can't be sex symbols, but what trumps all of that? And I hate to use that word, but there's no other word for it. What overcomes all of that? Celebrity. It doesn't matter what right?
Right.
It doesn't matter what you do. If you have celebrity, how long did it take him to put Puddin' Pop? What's his name? Bill, the comedian, Bill Cosby.
Right.
How long did it take him to put him in jail? He'd been Mickeying women for 35, 40 years. That's what I'm saying. He's the ultimate success symbol. He's got game show host celebrity. The reason that we have Trump is because of the Democrats. Barack Obama gets elected, says he's going to get us out of all these wars. What's he do? Doesn't get us out of any of these wars. So everybody said we're tired of being lied to by all sides. We're gonna send this egomaniac up there and let him bear in the closet all you sons of bitches for 4 years. Maybe we're gonna do it for 8, but we're tired of being lied to all the way around.
And that's from both parties.
Oh, well. So did you read the Pentagon? So you know how they did Pentagon Papers, an internal review of what happened in Vietnam? Did you know that they did one for Afghanistan?
I have not.
So guess what comes out in that? Nancy Pelosi was briefed on our waterboarding interrogations. That's why nothing ever came of that. Hell, the Democrats were informed. So it's all of our fault. It's, whether or not this, did he do something wrong? Probably, most definitely. But the idea that the Democrats are going to sit there and say that Hunter Biden is just some innocent bystander, that the Bidens aren't just as corrupt as anybody who's ever been in office. The idea that he gets this, what was it, $17,000 a month, something like that, some crazy amount of money to serve on a board that he has no expertise in other than his father's vice president. And of course, this happened in a foreign country on foreign soil. There's no recourse legally, but we're tired of being lied to by all sides, including the Democrats,
right?
Especially the Democrats who try to take the high ground. And it's just like fingernails on a chalkboard. It's everybody's sick of it.
Everybody's sick of it, but let me say one thing, Harry, that I want our listeners to listen to is that you'll notice we don't speak that much about national politics. We're trying to focus on local politics.
You can't tell, but Paul has an earring.
But we're trying to talk about local politics, because if you get into national politics, we lose a lot of our audience. Not that we favor either party or whatnot, but it's just a better principle for going for this. But you're welcome to speak your own mind on different things. But if you do think, well, why don't they talk about national politics more? Is because if we do, that's all we'll be talking about.
Right. We try to stay away from that. We try to stay focused on things going on around here that we can have real impacts on.
Right.
So do we have that image of Mobile Bay with the muddy water? Did you snag that? So one last thing, there's an AL.com article posted January 23rd that said Trump aims to remove waterway protections aiding developers. and I guess this has to do with the best management practices. Anyway, the important thing to go look at is this NASA aerial photograph that shows all the turbidity in Mobile Bay back in the 1970s when there were no regulations about silt fences and hay bales and best management practices and trying to protect the waterways from runoff. So go check that out. Paul, you got anything else? I got to get to work.
The other, just something relative to that is that we talk about, stormwater and all these water conditions. We make a good bit of money around here on tourism. Everything is water surrounding us. We have the 5 rivers, but yet we got that coal ash pond sitting up there threatening us, and at the whole time, and if that pond goes, I can assure you it'll be worse than BP. And at the whole time, we have Alabama Power telling us, "Oh, everything's cool. Don't worry about it. We know better than every other state in the United States."
So, can you get a close up on me, Nick? So every once in a while, I get a really nice Christmas gift that I like to re-gift to my friends. This is the Trump hat, the Trump sock. And so what you do is you put these socks on, and it has Trump hair, and it even comes with a little comb, so you can do his hair over like that. And there's a little pocket. There's Trump socks.
Oh,
so anyway, that's your Christmas re-gift, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
And since we don't have sponsors, I decided to talk about some things that I like. Warlord Beard Oil, made in Mobile, Alabama.
Beard oil?
Beard oil.
Can you drink it?
No, you can't drink it, and you don't want to use much of it because it's pretty stinky. But, you don't want to be one of those Axe body spray guys. This is a nice, subtle scent, and it doubles as a lubricant.
Want to do business
or
with local
tamer
members.
for this dang beard that they won't let me get rid of. So you might have been wondering why there are 2 knives sitting out on the table. The knife on your left, it was the finest knife made in the world for 20 years. It's a Benchmade 940 carbon fiber handle. So what's changed around here? Well, the finest knife in the world is now made in China, because they can pay a guy to sit there on the CNC machine for about 15 hours and make this knife right here. So, just another example of how NAFTA and international trade has just sucked this country dry.
Ross Perot.
Well, he was right. And that's another thing. I forgot to throw that in there on the Democrats. NAFTA and the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. And, of course, both of those were done under President Clinton, and he will forever have that albatross hung around his neck. Couple more things. I have a couple of books that I would recommend for you guys to take a look at. That's my original Boy Scout handbook. Dr. Mason wrote the bottom book. It's called $5 a Scalp, and it is a historical fiction. He was a professor over at USA for many years, and I have a signed copy of that. And then, of course, the history of Baldwin County. I think since we're accused of being in cahoots, I should tell people that I bought that at the mayor of Fairhope's bookstore. That should get some people talking.
That'll get your point.
Yeah. Well, anyway, boys and girls, unless Paul has something else, I think this is it for today. We hope y'all learned something and had a good time.
And we'll be back for number 20.
Oh, wait, I got one more thing.
I bet.
I got a little sound bite for you guys. See if you recognize it.
Had time to deal with these people and meet these people and talk to these people, yet we've treated them poorly, which I think I find offensive and I take personally. Had time to deal with these people and meet these people and talk to these people, yet we've treated them poorly, which I think I find offensive and I take personally.
Guess who that is?
Well, I take it personally too.
That's the straw man.
That's the straw man.
After he fired everybody in the county.
That's the day he'd fired everybody in 2010.
Right.
All right. Well, y'all have a good weekend. Paul and I have been busy. We have been to, let's see, I was in Spanish Fort Municipal Court last night, saw the magistrate that was allegedly the victim of assault by the mayor of Spanish Fort. That still hadn't gone to trial. Paul went to the Eastern Shore MPO meeting the other day to hear the proposal about the new bridge. we both went to the Republican Forum for Alabama Congress Place 1, and I hand delivered that dang anonymous letter to the district attorney's office on Wednesday. So we've been beating the bushes. I'm pretty wore out. I'm looking forward to the weekend. And just one more reminder, this weekend is the Senior Bowl over in Mobile. All of the top athletes, college athletes from around the country either play on the North or South team, and that is tomorrow. Do you know what time, Nick? Mid-afternoon is all. That's all I have to remember. And I usually get tickets and get the little free pass things over at the Alabama Power Company. They have a little substation there, a little workshop, and they put. I don't think I'm gonna get an invite this year.
Go figure.
So I'll have to take my own folding chair if I want to tailgate. So,
right.
Anyway, I hope you guys have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Adios. How long, Nick?